Hello everyone and welcome back to the F2 show by Inside F2, and it's an F2 show special today because big announcement yesterday. Colton Herta has been announced at Hitech in Formula 2 next season. We knew he was going to be in Formula 2 somewhere, we didn't know where. Hitech is his destination. Martin, were you surprised when you heard the news, or I think we've just been speaking off camera, haven't we? There's a lot that makes sense about this move, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as it was started to be in the water that Colton Herta might be coming to F2, which let's just pause a minute and say Colton Herta's coming to F2.
Yes.
What kind of world are we living in? I still can't quite think. If you told me that 6 months ago, even knowing that Cadillac were going to try and get him into the sport, it would not have been the route I'd have thought they would go down. But it certainly makes sense in terms of the super license points, and in terms of Hitech, well, it makes a lot of sense because they're a team that in the last couple of years has been competing for the championship. Okay, with one car in each year, but they've very much been up there with Luke Browning this year, with Paul Aaron missing out last year, coming third in the standings to Isaac Hadjar and Gabriel Bortoleto, and all three of those drivers seem to be in some kind of contention at least, or to have confirmed seats for F1 next year. So it was a really tough grid, and I think that Colton Herta coming into Hitech next year, I can't really think of a much better place, especially when you consider that Cadillac have an operational base at Silverstone and Hitech run most of their operations at Silverstone. And when you think of it in that way, and you think of it that actually Colton Herta will probably be able to walk between his F2 simulator and his F1 preparations for 2027 that we can probably assume are going to be going on, it makes so much sense for him to be there rather than at any other team. There were whispers of, could it be other teams? Could it be Prema, given their links to IndyCar? But I was not surprised that he didn't end up there, despite the fact that Andretti or Cadillac have those links, because frankly, they've not been competitive enough in the last couple of years to be able to trust, you're going to finish 10th in the championship. If Ollie Behrman isn't going to finish 10th in the championship in the Prema, which he didn't manage to do last season, and he needs a few more practice sessions as well to get the super license as Herta. If Behrman wasn't able to do that, then you really don't want to take that risk. So I think it made a lot of sense for Herta to go to Hitech.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. Let's break it down a bit then. So let's split this into three parts, if you like. So you've already covered a lot there, but let's go the initial move to Formula 2 and how that kind of came about. We'll cover Hitech. Obviously, there's a few things that you've mentioned there. The fact that they're really close to Cadillac geographically, are based at Silverstone. I want to talk about their simulator as well, which is one of the best in Formula 2, which could potentially be why he's chosen Hitech with so many tracks that he doesn't know, with Pirelli rubber that he doesn't know. And then we'll, end by talking about how we think he's going to do next year. So, obviously, these rumours kind of started circulating at the back end of the IndyCar season last season, 2025 IndyCar season. That came to an end a little while ago now, that he could potentially be looking to move into Formula 2 and gain those super license points. As you said, all of this is about getting experience, about getting super license points with a view to Formula 1, right? I think that's really, really important. Colton Herta isn't just coming over here for a jolly and to jump into Formula 2 because it's the best racing in the world. That's our biased opinion, but because it's a super exciting series. He's coming over here to gain the super license points, to learn the tracks, to learn the Pirelli rubber, and to get a Cadillac Formula 1 seat, whether that be in 2027 potentially seems a little bit unlikely, given Perez and Bottas are on a 2-year deal as far as we know. But yeah, he's coming over here with a view to getting a Cadillac seat at some point down the line, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to say that the Perez and Bottas are noted as being on multi-year deals. I believe that's what previous drivers have been described as being on, but actually that could be a 1-year deal plus a 1-year team option. So it could be that there is that direct pathway. It could be that he goes somewhere else in 2027 if there isn't space at Cadillac. But that's definitely the direct goal. I completely agree, because Colton Herta is a driver who has been linked with a Formula 1 seat 4 years, since 2021, 2022. In terms of was he going to go to Red Bull? Could he go to Alpine? He had tests with McLaren. Could he go to Sauber when Andretti were looking at buying them out there? He's been a driver who's been quite a rare breed in terms of the IndyCar F1 connection in terms of one that was identified very early on as someone that F1 teams had a real interest in. This is, not just a Cadillac phenomenon in terms of his raw pace, in terms of how quickly he got up to speed in IndyCar once he made the step up from Indy Next or Indy Lights as it was known. And he's a driver that has been identified to have that potential. And when you've got that potential and you've got the 9 IndyCar wins that he's got and you've had the F1 links that he's had, it was just such a surprise to see him go there. But with the reasons, as you say, in terms of needing just those few more super license points, needing to finish 8th in the championship or higher, or 10th with a few free practice sessions to get the F1 super license, that's why he's in Formula 2. There's a whole other debate as to why Formula 2 has more super license points allocated than IndyCar, but that's unfortunately, despite their best efforts, not something that Cadillac or Andretti were able to push through. They weren't able to get in a super license exemption a few years ago, and they're going directly down the F2 route this time.
It makes sense from that perspective, doesn't it? And it seems like Colton Herta's goal is to be in Formula One. He'd rather be in Formula One than IndyCar, which I think says a lot about him and his competitiveness as well. He has come to Europe before, don't forget as well. 2015, 2016, he was over here in a year in Euro. It was Euro Formula Open. He did a year, wasn't it? And then he did the old F3 as well, which was alongside Lando Norris at Carlin, rode in back then, Carlin, which seems a little while ago now. But obviously, not all of those tracks he'll have been racing tracks like Brands Hatch, for example. So correct tracks that aren't necessarily on the Formula One calendar. He'll have a bit of experience at Silverstone, I believe, if I'm right in saying that. But not many tracks he will be familiar with. Obviously, if Formula 2 goes to 14 rounds, 14 of the 24 venues, how do you think he's going to do? I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that he's going to need to overcome, isn't there, with the help of Hitech, with the help of the team, that, the tracks, getting to know the tracks, getting to know the Pirelli rubber, as we've already said, the Pirelli tyre, and managing those tyres. We've seen that Miata, who we're expecting to be his teammate, by the way, has come over and really struggled from Super Formula. He's struggled to adapt. Colton Herta is going to have to go through the same thing, and he's going to have a good benchmark in Ritomo Miata as well, someone who's had 2 years experience in Formula 2 now.
Well, I think in terms of expectations, let's be honest, he's going to be expecting and he's going to be expected to win the Formula 2 championship. And I think when a driver comes in with as much pedigree as he has, I think similar things were said about Ritomo Miata in terms of Super Formula champion, someone that was fighting with Liam Lawson, who himself had done very well in Formula 2. That was the expectation. So I think that's a really valid comparison for you to draw in terms of it might not be as easy as it seems. They've got so many, or he's got so many things to adjust to. If you think about the tracks, places like Albert Park and Jeddah and Bahrain, just at the start of the calendar, 3 tracks that will be, maybe familiar in terms of style, in terms of like an IndyCar street track with Australia and Jeddah, but you won't be familiar with them at all and with the different little intricacies that you can't necessarily replicate on a simulator. And then you get further into the European season, and I think that's where the real challenge will come for him, not just through his own levels, but because of the fact that basically every single driver that he'll be racing against will have been to Barcelona, will have been to Monza, will have been to Spa in every single series, right the way up F4, Formula Regional, Euro Cup 3, Euro Formula Open, whichever ones they've been through, tick off all of those summer tracks. And that's why it's going to be so difficult for Herta in that middle part of the season. I still think he should have enough to be fighting right at the front, but I think that's going to be the most difficult part. Also, in terms of the tyres, and that's something that to struggle with in terms of the different ways that you warm them up and that you manage them. In terms of the car, I'm always struck, and I'm always to an extent more thrilled watching IndyCar than I am watching Formula One, because the drivers are really throwing the cars around the circuits. It's so much there's so much skill involved, but you can't really do that quite so much with a Formula 2 car. You can't always, I'm not saying that they're drifting around corners, but they're not always too far off it. And it's a completely different driving style that you've got to adjust to, even if the cars are relatively similar. So I think there's going to be a lot for Colton Herta to adjust to. But I think, as we say, in terms of with Hitech, he's in one of the best places possible to do it.
Yeah, just before we move on to Hitech, so tracks that he has done on the calendar he's going to now in that year that he did in Euro Formula Open. He did Spa, he did Silverstone, he did Red Bull Ring, and he did Monza, and he did Barcelona, Catalonia. So 5 tracks that he's done, albeit only one weekend in each of those. Whereas, as you say, Martin, there are going to be drops 10 years ago, exactly that. And they're very different track, albeit not the layout is different, but they will be different feeling tracks now to what they were back then, particularly with the new Formula 2 cars and how they feel compared to what he was driving in Euro Formula Open back then as well. So 5 tracks that he's got experience on. There's going to be a lot of tracks that he's never driven on, as you say, which can be really interesting. I wonder, Martin, whether obviously Hitech mentioned they've got that pedigree of competing for championships. So Brown in this year, they're in the mix. With Aaron last year, they were in the mix. They've obviously had a history of people being promoted to Formula One from Hitech. You go all the way back to Nikita Mazepin, who was the first driver who was promoted to Formula One from the Hitech team, and a few drivers since then as well. There are drivers who have been promoted from Hitech. And how much the Oaks have been involved in it? Obviously, the experience of Formula One last year at Alpine and the start of this year, it feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it? But he was in Formula One as recently as this year. How big an impact will Ollie Oaks have had in Colton Herta going to Hitech?
I think it'd have had a really big impact, because from the perspective of Cadillac, you're going from an IndyCar paddock that is at times lined with all-star drivers into an F2 paddock where everyone is still proving their worth. Everyone is still fighting to get to Formula One, whereas actually Ollie Oaks has already been to Formula One. He's got that personal pedigree behind him. And so I think he would be able to see exactly the perspective that Cadillac are coming from. He'll be able to see exactly what their plans are for her. He'll perhaps even be able to guide them a bit in terms of how that works in the F1 paddock and the different mechanics of it, and things like just little details like what the perspective is of a Formula One team when they need an F2 driver to come and do a free practice session, which you would assume Herta would be doing next year. When they need an F2 driver to come do a free practice session and then go back to F2 for qualifying, and how that all works out. He knows both perspectives of that like the back of his hand. And so I just think little details like that would have been really important. I also think Oaks's pedigree in Formula 2 as well as Formula 1, he's one of the most consistently he's headed one of the most consistently successful teams. Hitech have been up there in Formula 2 for quite a long time now, without much let up, even between the different sets of cars in 2023 and 2024. So I think that was definitely an important factor in terms of that team choice.
And we mentioned it earlier, the simulator. Hitech have one of the best Formula 2 simulators in the game in Formula 2. I imagine that would have played a part as well, because presumably if you don't know those circuits, you're going to have to get up to speed very quickly with the circuits. And, the fact that, as you say, that is a stone's throw from Cadillac, you could probably literally, as you say, walk from one to the other. Not that you would do that, but all of those marginal details, they all play a part, don't they?
Well, exactly. If you're looking in terms of, let's say a simulator that's maybe the 4th or 5th best on the grid, you're going to capture so many of those little details on the track that the 11th best simulator won't capture, or the 10th best won't capture. But there's just going to be those little things that you'll miss out on, those little bits of information, perhaps a tiny little reference point that they have, or the different ways in which the simulator reacts to the driver's movements in a way that the lower grade simulators don't quite react quite as well. Those little things can be so important in terms of replicating his experience on the track, because when he gets to Formula 2 in Australia, Colton Herta will have, I would probably say, the most expectation of any driver in the Formula 2 era by quite a long way. Forget George Russell winning Formula 3, forget Charles Leclerc winning in Formula 3, forget Oscar Piastri, Gabriel Bortoleto. All of these drivers came in expecting to fight for the title. None of them came in as an IndyCar 9-time race winner. Herta will have to hit the ground running immediately, and to do that, he needs the best equipment. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for him to be going into that environment where they've got the best in class simulator, and he can give himself the best chance of doing that.
How quickly can he get up and run? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how he's going to do next season. How quickly can he get up and running next season? Is it going to take him a few races to get up and running and to be competitive, or can he be competitive from the get-go from Australia next year?
I've been thinking about this a lot in the last couple of days. I think there's two schools of thought, maybe. There's one in which that he has 3 or 4 rounds in which he doesn't struggle. He's maybe inside the top 10 in qualifying, but he's not quite setting the world alight. And then he really goes bonsai and starts winning lots and lots of races. Or he hits the ground running straight away. Logically, I'd be inclined to believe the first argument in that it will take him a few races, because as much as he is objectively a much more proven driver than any other driver on the grid ever has been, that doesn't remove him from having to adjust to a different car. And perhaps it will be more difficult for him to adjust from IndyCar to Formula 2 than drivers going from Formula 3 to Formula 2. And so there is that level of leeway that I want to give him, because I don't want to set the expectation level that he must be winning from race 1. But at the same time, I really wouldn't be shocked if he goes and takes pole and wins a feature race in Australia, because he is a driver of that high level. You do not get linked to Formula 1 for 4 years, and you do not get 9 IndyCar race wins against, and handily beating several very well proven Formula 2 drivers. You don't get that through luck. You get that through a loss of talent. And I think especially his maturity compared to a lot of the other drivers on the grid, he'll of course be one of the oldest on the grid coming into Formula 2. I think that will only help him as well, because especially if it does get a little bit tougher at the start of the season, you'd like to think that mentally he's not going to think, it's a waste of time, he should have stayed in IndyCar and all these things. But actually, it's just part of the learning process that he'll be going through. So I think he'll win. How quickly he wins is another question, but I certainly think he'll be up there before too long.
Good stuff. Nikesh wins with some quick fire. So first one, do you think he's going to beat his teammate Ritomo Miata in the championship next year? Yes or no?
Yes, I think Ritomo will be much quicker, but I don't think he's going to beat Colton Herta.
Okay, interesting. Do you think, or where do you think is going to be his first race victory, if you think he's going to wear it? How quickly can he get up and running? When can he win?
I'm going to say, I think he can win in Bahrain. I think
that's reasonable.
I think there's a track there that Hitech, obviously all the teams know really well, but for him it will just be a case of all the information possible that he can get. I think maybe, perhaps not the feature race, but if he qualifies, say, 8th position, he can win the sprint race in Bahrain. I think that's very possible, where the team has so much knowledge that will only help him go from here to here.
Final question, where will he finish in the championship in 2026?
I would be extremely surprised if he doesn't finish first.
Really? You think he's going to win it? Yeah.
If he was in a team that was slightly less proven, I would be, more maybe on the fence. But given the level of quality that he has, given the level of quality that Hitech have shown that they have, I think there's going to be a hell of a lot of competitors. I think Rafa Kamara will certainly be up there among others. But a driver of his quality won't be making the mistakes that 19, 20-year-old drivers who've just come from Formula Regional up to Formula 3 up to Formula 2, he won't be making those kind of mistakes too regularly, even if he has had a few spins in IndyCar this season.
Okay, really interesting. I also think he's going to do well. I don't think I personally can't see him winning the championship in his first year. I think that I can see him finishing in the top 5. I don't know whether he would win the championship. I think there's a few drivers. I back Rafa Kamara to win the championship. I think he'll win races, but I think it's going to be so interesting. It's going to be fascinating to see how he gets on. Is he going to come in and blitz the field and win the championship by a mile? Is he going to come in potentially like Rotoma Miata and take a year to get up to speed and then potentially be a contender in 2027? Will he be somewhere in the middle? It's going to be so interesting, isn't it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We would absolutely love to know how you think he's going to do. But time will tell ultimately, won't it? We will know how he's doing in Melbourne next year, obviously. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Keep posted on all of the latest Formula 2 news. What from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2. We'll see you next time.